The New York Islanders played well but lost a heartbreaker in Seattle, but were they robbed of the victory? We'll talk about that and a lot more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. A tough one on Saturday afternoon for the New York Islanders. They fall to the Seattle Kraken in Seattle 3-2. They lose in regulation, and yet this one was tough. And I'll tell you why. The Islanders played a really solid overall game against Seattle. I would say for the first 50 minutes, the Islanders were better than the Kraken, or at least on par with the Kraken. And it really looked like this team was set to play another one of those overtime games or a shootout game or a game that goes down to the final few minutes. And unfortunately, with 3 minutes and 13 seconds left in regulation, the Islanders give up a goal by Jamie Oleksiak that a lot of people think maybe should not have counted. And it's a tough one because the Islanders just didn't get a really good explanation. They thought there was goalie interference. Clearly, there was contact with the goalie. I mean, there was very little doubt about that, but it turned out to be not enough. And Ilya Sorokin, even though he, had contact, the Islanders appealed and ended up losing. The call was upheld. So here's what happened if you break it all down. Brandon Tanev went into the blue paint and did make contact with Ilya Sorokin. The shot taken by Oleksiak deflected off of Brock Nelson and then went in off of Sorokin, who kind of was a little off balance as a result of the contact that was taking place earlier in the play with Tanev. The goal was called a good goal on the ice, and then you end up with the Islanders and Patrick Waugh trying to determine whether or not there was goalie interference. So they asked for the review, and they end up losing the appeal. And as a result of that, with 3 minutes and 13 seconds left, the Islanders lose almost 2/3 of that time, because if you make the appeal for the review and you lose it, it's a 2-minute delay of game penalty. I still think it was a worthwhile request for the review. And the explanation that the Islanders got, here's what Patrick Waugh had to say. He said the explanation was a funny one. He said it was not enough. He went in by himself. He bumped into our goalie while the puck was coming, and apparently that's not enough, and there's enough and not enough in our league. Now, after the game, Ethan Sears from the New York Post asked a question to Patrick Waugh saying, "Do you think?" And Waugh interrupted him and said, "That we got robbed? Yeah. I guess tonight I don't, because there's enough and not enough. Somebody's going to have to explain to me what's enough and what's not enough. You're in the crease or you're not in the crease by yourself. You bump into the goalie or you don't bump into the goalie. That was the first time I ever heard that. I guess I didn't play enough games. And Wah then added, yeah, we were all confused by this call. So, look, when you look back on it, I think Wah made the right decision, and the Islanders coaches in the booth made the right decision because it was so close as far as whether or not that play would have been overturned. And I understand to an extent that it wasn't, even though I think it should have been. And here's why. It was close. It was borderline. And under those circumstances, I think if the referees on the ice would have said no goal because of goalie interference, and the Kraken had appealed and asked for the review, I think they would have lost as well. I think that in a case that was oh so close, that the call on the ice was almost certainly going to be upheld. But from an Islanders perspective, I think it was a coin flip before the review as to whether or not it would be overturned or not. And realistically, if it's a coin flip, and we're talking roughly 50-50, then the odds of scoring a goal in the last 3 minutes and 13 seconds are less than 50%. So your best chance of getting at least a point in this game was, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's do the review. And to the Islanders' credit, they did kill off the penalty, but it cost them, 63% of the remaining time left in the game. So I think Patrick Waugh did the right thing by asking for the review. It was a gamble. It was at best a 50-50 chance, but I think it was the team's best opportunity to try to win the game or at least get a point in the game. And unfortunately, because the call was not overturned and the Islanders did not manage to get the equalizer in the last few minutes of this game, they end up losing in regulation and their 5-game point streak comes to an end. But I will say this, and we will talk about this even more in the next segment, but at the end of the day, if the Islanders play the kind of game they played against Seattle consistently going forward, they will win a lot more games than they will lose. This team is not talented enough or deep enough for me to say, they'll go 8-1-1. But, you go 6-2-2 or 6-3-1 in 10 games. You do that consistently, they would be capable of that, or 5-3-2 or something in that range, where if they play the kind of hockey they played Saturday against Seattle and against Edmonton and Vancouver in the last, few games, you play that style of hockey, you will continue to be competitive in almost every game you play, unless your goalie absolutely plays terribly or the other team gets a whole lot of lucky bounces. And let's face it, the game-winning goal, not only was there the question of whether or not there was goalie interference, but it also, kind of took a weird bounce off of Brock Nelson and into the net. So did the Islanders get a little bit unlucky on Saturday? Yeah, they did. Should the goal have been overturned? It was so close, and I get why they didn't, but I still think it should have been. And more importantly, the Islanders actually are playing the last few games, maybe the last 4 games or 5 games, the kind of hockey they need to play. And everydayers, you heard me talk about this a couple of weeks ago and early last week before the team started winning. They need to play simple hockey. Well, guess what? That's what they were doing, and it worked. So, yeah, no points. Possibly were they robbed? Yeah, maybe. Hopefully those kind of bad bounces and bad calls even out over the course of an 82-game season. But I will say this, over the last 4 or 5 games, I am so much happier about the way this team is playing than I was even before all these injuries started to pile up against the New York Islanders. So I will take that performance and hope for better moving forward, knowing that if the Islanders keep playing that way, they should win more than they lose. And again, remember, the goal right now for this team, when you're missing 2/3 of your top line and half of your defense core, is we were hoping for a 5-point road trip. Go 500 on this 5-game road trip. Well, right now they've got 3 points in 3 games, and the 2 teams they are playing next are, I wouldn't say easy games, but they're not as hard as Edmonton and Vancouver. I'll say that much. So there's a chance to get those points. Win one of these last 2 games. You've got that 5-point road trip. And each game that passes, that the team continues to play at least NHL 500 hockey, means that when they get healthy, they have a chance to still be competitive and keep this season alive, and that is what you want to see from this team. But there's something else they've got to do, and we'll talk about that. We'll have our key takeaways and hero and go to the game. Plus, for our Islanders birthday of the day, I'm going to make this easy. The player just was an Islander last year, is not on the team this year, and he is the NHL's all-time hits leader officially. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And look, all you have to do on Prize Picks is make a selection. For example, will Justin Jefferson get more or less than 83.5 receiving yards? Patrick Mahomes, more or less than 267.5 passing yards? This is what you need to do in order to play on Prize Picks. Just download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. Code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So, for the Islanders, it was a tough loss. It really, truly was, because I think they played a solid overall game. And, again, was this team outstanding? No. But they did a lot of things the right way. Pierre Engvall scoring for the 2nd game in a row. 2 goals in 2 games for Engvall. A shorthanded breakaway goal by Brock Nelson, and the Islanders had a 2-1 lead early in the 3rd period. Another really solid effort by Ilya Sorokin, although one of those goals kind of a little soft. But again, he kept this team in the game. And the beautiful thing is the Islanders only allowed 27 shots on goal in this game. It wasn't like they were just getting, struggling all game long to get the puck out of their zone and couldn't do it. No, wasn't like that. And in the faceoff circle, again, Islanders getting it done. J.G. Pageau wins 9, only loses 4. Brock Nelson wins 10, only loses 6. Bo Horvat took 9 faceoffs, won 7 of them. You do that, that always helps. It always helps. 3 assists from defensemen when the whole team only scored 2 goals. these are things that the little things that help. Noah Dobson blocked 4 shots. I mean, this team played a fundamentally sound game for most of the hockey game. And you sort of get the feeling they just deserved a little bit better. Were the Islanders dominant? No. I think this was a very evenly played game between two teams that are somewhere between average and slightly above average. But, the Islanders usually struggle in matinees. They did not struggle in this game. They came ready to play. The Islanders, usually don't string solid performances back to back to back. They did. Isaiah George, again, had a couple of moments that were shaky. He was a -2 in the game, but he's learning, and it's interesting. And I like this fact. Isaiah George, 18 minutes and 40 seconds of ice time. So when he had a little bit of a shakier game, Patrick Roy cutting back his ice time, and it made sense. One thing the Islanders still need, and I think it's glaringly obvious, that fourth line just not doing much of anything offensively, and defensively they're kind of struggling as well. So, Kyle McLean, Oliver Wahlstrom, Matt Martin. Matt Martin played 4 minutes and 56 seconds. Kyle McLean, 6:52. Oliver Wahlstrom, 7:09. Clearly right now, Patrick Roy not thrilled with the way that line is playing, but credit to the New York Islanders for another strong performance from Horvat, Lee, and Pajot. Nelson, Siplikov, and Palmieri have been extremely consistent, and now the last 2-3 games, Cizikas, Engvall, and Holmstrom kind of picking up their game offensively, and that's really good to see. Here is the one thing that I'm a little concerned about. Well, before I do that, let's talk about our hero and our GOAT of the game. And I mean, to me, the hero of the game, I'm going to go with Pierre Engvall for scoring in his second straight game and for just doing things the right way. And we'll talk more about that in our next segment. And as for the GOAT of the game, I'm going to go with the replay official. For the replay office in Toronto, the War Room, just not overturning that particular call. I think they should have. So I'm going to hand them the GOAT of the game. Again, was this a dominant performance by the New York Islanders? No. But this is the way they need to play to be successful. And I'll take it a step further. And this is what I was going to get to. Even when Matthew Barzal and Mike Riley and Adam Pelech and Alexander Romanov and Anthony Duclair, even when everybody's healthy and everybody is back in the lineup, the style of hockey the Islanders have been playing over the last 4 or 5 games has to still be the style of hockey they play if they want to win. Don't get fancy. Yeah, Matthew Barzal is going to do his thing sometimes. He's going to skate around and he's going to try to hold on to the puck and make plays. And sometimes it works, but you know what? This is the Islanders. When they went to the conference final in back-to-back years under Barry Trotz, they won by being difficult to play against, by forechecking relentlessly, and cashing in on opponents' mistakes. They need to do similar things here. What do we see under Patrick Roy? You go to the net. You get those dirty goals. You get the puck out of the net and transition. These little things that this team has done well over the last few games, the keep it simple, stupid, the KISS theory of playing hockey has to be the formula for this team to win consistently. Because I'll tell you right now, even when everybody's healthy, this team does not line up player for player talent-wise with the Carolina Hurricanes or the New York Rangers or the Edmonton Oilers or the Winnipeg Jets or any of those elite teams, the Florida Panthers in the NHL, that doesn't mean they can't win games against those teams on occasion. They can. They could maybe even, if they play their best, steal a series if they make the playoffs. But you're not going to get there trying to be fancy. Keep it simple. Screens, deflections, tip-ins, go to the net, rebounds, shoot when you have the opportunity. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Get the puck out of your zone. Clear the opposing players out from in front of your net. Don't take foolish penalties. Play smart, disciplined, simple hockey and make the other team earn it if they're going to beat you, and force them to make mistakes by being smart, simple, and relentless. In the modern NHL, hockey is largely a game of mistakes. And if you make less of them than the other team and force them into making a few more, you're going to win a lot of games, especially if you have a good goalie like Ilya Sorokin or when he's on, Semyon Varlamov. I don't care if Matthew Barzal is back in the lineup. This is the way the Islanders need to play if they're going to consistently put together some consistently good hockey games. If they do that, they have a chance to compete for a playoff spot. If they don't, it could be the most frustrating season, and we could be back to where we were 3 weeks ago, where this team just kept stubbing its toe, shooting itself in the foot. Pick your analogy. They can't beat themselves. They can't get fancy. They have to be smart and keep it simple. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. We'll talk a little about Pierre Engvall, and we'll answer your questions tomorrow. So we will have on tomorrow's show a mailbag. So last chance to send one in before our next mailbag question segment. And we've got that. We've got our Islanders birthday of the day and a whole lot more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your hiring and matching platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with quality candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I got to talk Pierre Engvall. I try to be a straight shooter on this when I talk about this team. And, you'll notice I'm not ever going to say this guy stinks or this guy is a bum or, I will say this guy is struggling or he needs to play this aspect of his game better. And if a guy is playing poorly, I'm going to call him out. And if a guy is playing well, I'm going to say that he is. Well, I called out Pierre Engvall in training camp and early in the season, and he wasn't playing well. But the last few games, Engvall seems to have gotten the message that Patrick Waugh was trying to send during training camp, during preseason, right after he came back up from Bridgeport. He is playing the way Patrick Waugh wants him to play. And when asked whether or not Engvall got the message he was trying to send after the Kraken game, here's what Waugh said. 100% he did. He goes to the net. He made some nice plays. It was a nice goal for us. I mean, we had our chances, and that was one of them, and it was a big goal for us. Anders Lee, the captain, also really liking what he sees. You know what? When he gets that speed and he goes to the middle, he can beat the guy wide, drive him down low and turn up, and that's when he's really effective. And he's getting to the middle of the ice. His rebound goals are because he's getting dirty, and he's had a few of those, and he's getting rewarded for it and paying off. And Lee is 100% right. Here's the thing. Look, I know Pierre Engvall is never going to be a physical player. That's not his game. But even just going to the front of the net and paying the price to get there, taking a hit and keep going through it, battling for a loose puck. You know what? You win a loose puck because you have a long reach, or you use your stick, or you just use your size to box out the other player and move the puck. Doesn't matter. You don't need to drive your opposing player into the third row. Yeah, I love to see that. It's entertaining. It can be effective, but there's more than one way to win a 50-50 puck battle. Engvall, over the last 2 or 3 games, has been going to the net, shooting the puck more, winning some of those 50-50 puck battles, and just going to the dirty areas when he needs to. And you know what? Just like the rest of the team needs to keep it simple, that's the kind of game Pierre Engvall needs to play. Everydayers know, I have said, Pierre Engvall is capable of being a useful third or fourth line player. I think more of a third line guy because of his lack of physicality. But if he keeps playing the way he has the last 2 or 3 games, he can be a very useful player for the New York Islanders. The key is he can't rest on his laurels. Consistency has been a problem for Engvall his whole career. And yeah, he gets praise from the coach and from his teammates for playing well the last few games. Don't let that get to your head. Keep grinding, Pierre. It is the way you stay in the lineup and you become successful under Patrick Waugh on this team. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day, and today is the 37th birthday of former Islanders winger Cal Clutterbuck, a third-round pick of the Wild back in 2006. Clutter, 5'11", 215, made his NHL debut with the Wild in 07-08, and the Welland, Ontario native became a full-time NHLer the following year. Traded to the Islanders in the deal for Nito Niederreiter before the 2013-2014 season, and was with the Islanders every year through last season. He finished his NHL career, assuming he does not come back, with 143 goals and 293 points in 1,064 games, add 12 goals, 20 points in 81 playoff games. Here's the stat that I think will surprise a lot of people. Cal Clutterbuck only had 698 career penalty minutes in those 1,064 games. You know how many seasons he had over 100 penalty minutes? 1. You know what? He never had more than 60 penalty minutes in a season with the Islanders. He is not a dirty player. He's just a physical player. One of his better games with the Isles, January 3rd, 2016, Islanders hosting the Dallas Stars at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And in this game, Kari Lehtinen, the goalie for Dallas, Tomas Greiss, the goalie for the New York Islanders. And with the game late in the second period, and the Islanders ahead, Cal Clutterbuck adds to the lead. Travis Hamonic and Nick Leddy set up his 8th goal of the year. But after the Stars score early in the third, a shorthanded goal by Cal Clutterbuck, with help from Casey Cizikas on the assist at 9:53, puts the Islanders up by a score of 6-3. Two late goals by the Stars weren't quite enough, and the Islanders skate away with a 6-5 win. Cal Clutterbuck, 2 goals in this game. He was a +2. He had a shorty and the game winner. Did that all in 12 minutes and 5 seconds on ice and had 3 shots on goal. Cal Clutterbuck, now a member of the MSG broadcast team for now. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we're back tomorrow. We'll preview tomorrow's game against the Flames in Calgary, so make sure you join us for that. It's a 9 o'clock Eastern time start on Tuesday. We'll have that and a lot more. Now, if you have a question, a comment, you want to ask us a mailbag question, lockedonislanders@gmail.com is the email address. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we talk about whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I'm live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for instant insight and analysis, and it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.